What's happening tonight, fans? Welcome once again to Holding Court with Todd Dagenais along with the coach. My name is Sharon, another spring edition, our third of the spring of 2012 for you. And UCF finishing up the big spring tournament here at the venue this past weekend. A lot of volleyball to talk about and a lot of other coaching things to talk about based on that weekend, coach. But you said you played five, was it 5 teams over the course of that, over the course of the weekend?
5 teams, 10 sets.
5 teams, 10 sets. So you collect all the data that you need. First of all, tell us how those 10 sets went in your eyes.
Well, I still think we got a lot of work to do. And, you know, when I look back at where we were last year, we were much more game ready for the fall than we are right now. But, you know, I think that's to be expected. We replaced a pretty big part of our offense, and we're still trying to get through the process of getting our rotations right and getting our numbers back up. I don't think people realize how much of a change that is when you go through a setter change. And so right now we're clawing our way back. We have more opportunities to get better and put ourselves in a position where we're once again clicking on all cylinders.
You know, you talked last week about the competition that you're facing. You face up against Florida State, 2 of the 5 teams that you faced. How did your team compare to that level of volleyball that they play?
Well, the good news now is I think just by process of recruiting and by process of what we're doing in the weight conditioning room, my feeling right now is we're pretty athletic. I think we could athletically compete with them. Now, you know, they've got a lot of players that are very athletic, that are very well trained and been playing volleyball for a long time, and we're still trying to get that experience right now. But, you know, I mean, really, we competed certainly against Florida and Miami. I thought against Miami we had our chances. As a matter of fact, I remember us being up 11-5 at one point. But we split with Florida State. That's a Final Four team. You know, really, the spring's it's not so much about what the final score on the scoreboard says. You know, it's nice to win those games, but really, it's really more about trying to get a lot of players experience against competition that's as good or better than what we're going to see in the fall. And that's really what it was about. Just get a lot of people playing time, then collect a lot of data, and just kind of figure out where the things are that we need to fix.
I wanted to ask you about the data portion of it because you know, obviously baseball season is coming right around the corner. The movie Moneyball that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, sabermetrics and whatnot, and it seems like there's this data revolution going on in sports on every level, not just baseball, but we've seen it in basketball, we've seen it in football, and we see it here in college volleyball. You're kind of known for being kind of a data geek among the coaching ranks. Tell me what sort of information you get to glean and how that helps you, particularly in a time like now in spring.
Sure. Well, we have a program that's called Data Volley, and it's a computer program that you enter in the keystrokes. Every contact of the ball is entered in the computer. And it's the program that's used widely by all the national teams around the world. And so it's a pretty high-level, high-functioning program that can give you way more data than you really want. But so we use that program, and we keystroke all the matches, and then we go through and we crunch the numbers, and at the end I get a stack of sheets about a ½ inch thick of data that I can look at. Hitting percentages, situational hitting percentages, side-out percentages, point-scoring percentages, dig-to-kill percentages, all these things that we look at when mathematically added together ends up, you know, you end up winning or losing based on some of those numbers. And so what we do is we have to figure out what kind of team we are. Are we a big serving, blocking, defensive team? If so, then we're looking for a higher percentage in those areas. Are we really more of a serve, pass, side out kind of team? Well, then we look for numbers more in those areas. And so once we figure out what our team identity is, then we start calibrating the percentages of each of the categories that we need to what our team is. Some years it's higher in some areas, other years it's higher in others. And so that's something, you're right, that's something that we're known for. Now, it's really important that when you have all that data, you don't get paralyzed by it. I think there's still a big part of this that's still gut feeling and instinct and those kinds of things. I think sometimes coaches can get really paralyzed by the numbers. You know, it has to allow for swings. It has to allow for slumps. And just because the percentages are down on a player doesn't mean you give up on a player. It means you coach them up and try to get them better. And so really what we do with all that data is we look at this spring and we try to figure out what kind of team we're going to be this fall. And then we're going to train accordingly. You know, really our practices are based a lot on what those percentages are. So for example, I think our rotation 5 has been one of our best rotations. We're signing out at really an astronomical number. When I get into a 2-hour practice, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on rotation 5 because when you have a team that's as highly academic as ours, you have to make that practice time really, really efficient.
Yeah, the NCAA, you can't have all that. You can only spend so much time anyway.
Sure,
right?
and really, I mean, the NCAA will let you practice 4 hours a day, you know, and I've been with programs that have practiced 3.5 hours a day, but I just don't think that's conducive to kind of student athletes that we have. So we really try to condense the amount of time that we're in practice so they can be students in the process. But the numbers allow us to do that. We really look at those numbers, and where the percentages are low, that's what we work on. Where the percentages are high, we just kind of touch on it and move on.
Interesting. I mean, do you see that there's a difference between certain philosophies of coaching and other programs compared to here, where others rely less on the numbers and others like yours rely more? Is there sort of is there as much of a split in volleyball as we see maybe in other sports that are experiencing that data revolution?
Sure. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, you know, philosophies are as different as the number of coaches that are out there. And, you know, for me, there's a lot of things that other coaches do that I don't, and they're very successful at it. And the reason is I don't understand it. You know, I don't understand the basis behind it, so I can't teach it. If I can't teach it, I can't sell our athletes on it. So we don't do it. And I'm sure maybe it's the same way with data. People don't completely understand all the mathematical computations that go into the data, and because they don't understand it, they're not comfortable with it, they coach more on feel. But I'll tell you this, there's been a lot of coaches who've won national championships and gone to Final Fours just based on feel and instinct and experience. You know, we're relying a little more heavily on the numbers because for us right now, as we're a growing program, really the percentages, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess really you know, the margin of error is really a lot smaller. So we need to dive into those numbers a little bit more.
Okay, interesting. Now, back to the volleyball that we see here. I know that you guys have sort of a week with this weekend, nothing going on, but we're still not done because the spring season goes through April 14th, the day before Tax Day, it may get a little bit more taxing for your team as we go on here, to use a really awkward segue. But what do you have now coming up after this coming weekend?
Well, what we have right now is, we've gone back to the numbers, and this week's training has really been based on that. We're going to get an extra day of training in this week on Saturday morning, and that's going to allow us to kind of solidify some of the things that we still need to work on and still need to get better on. And the list is still pretty long. So then we'll take Sunday off. We come back next week, and then we prepare to go up to Gainesville. And we're going to play Florida 2 more times. We're going to play South Florida 2 times, 2 games each. So there'll be another 8 sets of volleyball. And again, that's going to more than likely be our last indoor competition of the year. And so really it's important for us to come out of that weekend feeling good about where we are heading into the fall. I really challenged the team last week, or actually on Monday of this week, and challenged them, said, look, this is like our preseason right now. We have got to come out of these 2 weeks feeling like we're ready to go for the fall. And so that's the challenge, and we're getting closer. I thought the last couple of days of practice have been great. So now we head up to Gainesville. We play Florida twice. We'll play South Florida twice, and that'll likely be our last indoor competition before we head into what we call Beach Week, which is our last week of spring training. We do a lot of sand training, and then we go defend our title at the Fiesta on Siesta.
All right, so that should be a lot of fun. So be sure to keep an eye on that on UCFAthletics.com for all the latest. And like we said, well, enjoy the week, Coach, of practice, and we'll catch you right before the tournament up at the Odo.
That sounds really good. Thank you very much.
And thank you for tuning in here on Holding Court with Todd Dagenais. For all of us here at UCF Athletics, I'm Jeff Sharon along with the coach saying thanks for watching. We'll catch you again next week.